I don't think that I can make a 12-week year look like the men who wrote the book want me to make it look, because I am a mother with ADHD whose goals are creative. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I talked about some of the things that I think people need before they do the 12-week year in my last video, and now I want to dive deep into the reasons I'm not going to do it, at least not exactly as it was designed, because the 12-week year was not designed for someone like me. Not like in a self-limiting way, like, this is too hard, I can't do it, like that. But as I was reading it, I kept thinking, what needs to change to make something like this work for a brain that's very ADHD and whose goals are creative? But before we can get into what I think will work for me, I want to quantify the flaws in the system for somebody with ADHD, especially a woman, a mother with ADHD. Now, it's said, especially in the 12-week year book, that the main reason that people fail to achieve their goals is a lack of follow through on their plans, which I believe. Like that, I've read the data. I've been obsessed with self-help and productivity for a decade, maybe longer, 15 years, I don't know. And that seems to be the case. Like people would always talk about like February 15th is the day that people give up on their New Year's resolutions, right? But the book's solution then is plan better, have more discipline, push through. That doesn't work when you have ADHD. Its diagnostic criteria include debilitatingly low levels of follow through. This is something that I personally fought with a whole bunch of anxiety to the point of like clinical anxiety problems. And I've decided that isn't really an option for me either. Just try more, isn't it? Just be more anxious also turns out to not be a sustainable long term solution. So I want to turn actually to the 12-week year, which buries some gems that I think anybody with ADHD really needs to pay attention to. First of all, the best discipline comes from making it too hard to do anything except the next right thing. When you put limits on your phone that are really hard to break, when you put your phone in a different room and throw a notebook in front of you, it's a lot easier to do the writing than it is to do the scrolling TikTok. I remember talking to somebody who told me that they were impressed with my discipline, with my ability to stick with things. And I'm like, no, it's not that I'm disciplined. It's that I understand that I'm not. And because I'm not disciplined, I'm going to put all of these stopgaps in place to ensure that I don't follow my little monkey brain that wants to sit there and play solitaire for 4 hours. But the other thing that the book points out is that the best goals to pursue exist in your personal zone of genius. That is, this is something that you are good at, you're interested in, and you believe will make the world a better place. Like, those are the goals that are easiest to commit to, even for neurotypical people. And I think this is magnified in people with ADHD. On the flip side, the book focuses on how to make strategic tasks, those that are going to further your goals, that are in your personal zone of genius, urgent and important. This Eisenhower matrix thing. They're like, this is how you can make this feel important to you. Make a note of it, write it down where you can see it often, remind yourself of just how important it is to you to meet these goals. Urgency has a huge effect on ADHD motivation. Importance does not. Half of the system, therefore, is focused on making cornerstone habits important, and it's not going to work. Half of the system from the get-go will not work for somebody with ADHD because it's focusing on the wrong aspect of discipline, making habits important. An ADHD-friendly version should be focused on the 4 C's of ADHD motivation: captivate, create, compete, and complete. And also, it's important to remember that a routine will not work for somebody with ADHD for very long. And I need to own that. I need novelty in order to complete things. Do the same thing every Monday morning has its place, but when it comes to creative tasks, it will not stick for me. Another thing that I really struggled with as I was trying to complete the pre-12-week year is this system is built around top-down thinking, which many neurodivergent brains find overwhelming at best and impossible at worst. They claim that it's really simple. Take your 3-year goal, divide it into 1/12 of its steps so that you have, because the 3-year goal is 12 week years, drill down to that 1/12. put those into their steps, put those on a calendar. You'll get there. You know, that's the idea. It talks about how easy this is, but that involves the ability to at least reasonably accurately estimate time usage, estimate your energy levels, estimate when you'll be able to do things, know your schedule to an extent. And my brain does not do this thing at all. Instead, I have to vision from top down, switch gears, brainstorm all the little things on my mind, and then see where I can connect the dots between small actions and their larger goals. Starting big and working into details, like an inverse, if you've ever heard of the snowflake method for writing, where you do like one sentence of a premise and then make that a 3 sentence premise and then make that a paragraph and so on. Like, this is the opposite of that. And it stalls me out every single time that I try. I can go big first. I have intuitive intuition if you ever have looked into Myers-Briggs stuff. And if you want more on Myers-Briggs and personalities and stuff, leave me a comment and I would love to talk about that. I'm obsessed with trying to figure out what works for different types of brains. Anyway, coming up with ideas, visioning the future, that's all a lot of fun for me and I'm capable of doing it. I know what I want to do long term. But then taking that and breaking it in half, breaking it into thirds, breaking it into 1/12, my brain short circuits. I'm clearly recovering from an injury right now. And I was talking to my occupational therapist and he was like, "Does this hurt?" And I'm like, "No, it doesn't hurt. But I feel like there's a nerve missing where my brain's firing the signal to my hand to do a thing and the receptor isn't there. It's on vacation." And for me, when I'm doing goal planning and I'm like, "Hi, I understand that what I need to do next is to break this into smaller pieces," and my brain fires a signal, and the part of my brain that does top down thinking is on vacation. There's an out of office. It does not work. There's just a missing synapse. And really, I think that's actually part of what's in ADHD is there's a missing synapse there. So what I do next is I switch gears. I go to brainstorm all the little things on my mind, figure out what I've committed to, what little steps I'm already taking. And then I try to see if I can connect the dots from these small actions to their larger goals. Don't do the math. The math doesn't work for ADHD. You can't say, okay, if I work on this and I do 1/12 of the project 12 times, it will get done, because there's such an unpredictability in how much is going to be accomplished in one day. I think that's part of why I struggle so much with, just breaking it down into smaller pieces, because my brain does not fraction evenly. I need the details in a row so I can work from the bottom back up. Which major goals are these details aligned with? Am I missing steps? Is there something that I have put aside a lot of time for that isn't a priority or shouldn't be a long-term priority for me? And we're going to get into that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about my goals a little bit here and how this system was not built for them. I am trying to finish a really complex Notion database for novel writing. I am trying to finish a musical. The system that I looked at is designed for relatively predictable and inherently uncreative goals. Make sales calls, close more deals, have a better relationship with your spouse. Those are good goals, but there are not a lot of what are called unknown unknowns in those situations. If you input something, you're going to get something relatively predictable back out. If you spend more time with your spouse who you married for a reason, you're going to have a better relationship with them. If you make 5 sales calls a week, you're probably going to end up with more sales in the end than if you stayed at 2 sales calls a week. It's relatively predictable. They lose weight in this category. I probably wouldn't, but that's like a whole other conversation that I am not equipped to have. I am not the right person for that conversation, so we're going to set that aside. Anyway, while the text says that it can be used for any kind of goal, including writing fiction, I'm not convinced that the system is adoptable as is. Like, if it's a 12-week year, let's look at the last 12 weeks of my life. That goes back to, let's see, it's mid-September right now, so August, July, June. In those last 12 weeks, I have taken a song, the first song that I ever finished from a musical and called done, and I scrapped it entirely. I put in a totally new one that I'm still working on refining. I wrote 2 other songs that were not part of the plan. I'd found missing elements. I had to rearrange things. You can only drill down so far before you're guessing, and if you're guessing, you're often wrong. The first book that I ever developmentally edited for myself about a decade ago, 2015, I made a schedule. I looked at the number of scenes that I had written. I went through Susan Dennard's Guide to Revisions, which is fantastic if you're a beginner. I don't think I would have gotten through it without it. But I was like assigning how hard a scene was to revise based on how many notes I had taken on it. I made myself a little schedule, which scenes I would edit on which days, which ones I would finish, all the way through the entire book ahead of time. And I followed it. That is, like, I kept looking at it. I didn't ignore the plan. I looked at the plan. I tried to complete the plan. But by the end of it, I was off by months. The changes that I needed to make weren't reflected in the plan anymore, even though I had planned it. I'd become a better writer. I learned more about the characters. A change that I made in scene 3 cascaded for the next 20 scenes. I had to make changes the rest of the way through. Those kinds of things, they happen with creative work. These days, I edit books for a living. Most of my income comes from one-on-one work with novelists. And I still have never accurately guessed the remaining steps or time on a revision to my own work. Creativity is inherently saturated in unknown unknowns. Another thing that I find is saturated in unknown unknowns is parenthood, especially as a mother and especially as a mother with ADHD. It is, I think, important to note that this book, The 12-Week Year, was written by 2 men. And men approach the world, especially neurotypical men, I can't say if they are or not, but they approach the world from an entirely different vantage point than women can, those raised female, especially if they have a family. The week that I'm scripting this video is my 3rd week, like I said, of working through how I could possibly tackle the 12-week year myself. And I struggled this week. And the reasons that I struggled are because I'm a mom. I'm a mom with ADHD, making it worse. I had taken on another job about a year and a half ago, coaching gymnastics. Extremely part-time, partially because I enjoy it. I love gymnastics. But what finally got me to apply to work at the gym that I've really loved going to was that my daughter joined the team, and there was a discount provided to employees that felt like it would be financially helpful for our family. I'm on the schedule 1 day a week, but I'm often the first person that people text when they need a sub. And before this week started, I'd already agreed to 4 days on the schedule. Then my son got sick. Then I got sick. Not as sick, but sick enough that it messed with my own productivity levels and energy levels. Now my daughter is sick. And my husband did stay home with our son 1 day. But it was after I had done all of the work reaching out to see if anybody could cover my shift at the gym. And they couldn't. I also had to take my son to get a haircut because picture day is coming up. I had my first occupational therapy appointment. All of that to say, I'm really glad that I haven't actually found a Notion template that works for me for the 12-week year and then meticulously planned everything out for that week, because it would have collapsed on day 1. It would have collapsed Sunday afternoon. And the disappointment of missing my own goals would have made me lose a lot of the motivation to continue in the first place. I wouldn't have made any progress if I realized I wasn't going to make the progress that I needed to. A lot of times when you read productivity advice or watch productivity advice from men, they talk about the brilliance of the Eisenhower matrix, splitting things up into 4 quadrants: urgent, important, not important. One of those quadrants is delegate. If tasks are urgent but they're unimportant, delegate them, say men. But what they don't say is who they are delegating to, which in matters of taking care of the home, in families without a lot of income for a nanny or whatever, that invisible labor, the labor they don't even bother mentioning has to get done by somebody, is done by their wives. And like, this is not a call out to my own husband. He's fantastic. He actually does a lot of the invisible labor in our house. But this system was not made with me in mind. Or, it was made with me in mind. I'm the person that more important people delegate to, just by nature of being the mom, getting the phone calls from the school. I am the support net. There's no support net for the support net. And while this invisible labor is just as present for neurotypical women, I don't want to downplay that it's not hard to be a mother at all in current society without any safety nets beyond that. Aspects of ADHD end up compounding these negative effects of carrying that burden. I have low executive function to begin with. I've made a lot of support systems for myself to figure out how to handle it over the 20-ish years since I was in high school and realized that it was a problem. So I think I can cosplay as a neurotypical when it comes to my own productivity. But I'm the assumed executive functioner for 3 of the 4 people in my family, one of them who has severe ADHD, where all of the advice is, you, the parent, You, the mother, need to do the executive functioning for him. That's your job. You need to do it for him until he can figure out how, which I have issues with. Different video, probably. But it means that I have triple the executive function demands of a man, in theory, and the of executive ability of maybe a teenager at best. Like, I have a lot of strategies, I have a lot of structures, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. It's possible, but it's not easy. And then I can also become abnormally attached to rigid structures. The more parameters I give myself, like, I'm going to film a video on Tuesday that I then can't follow through with, I'm coughing too much to film a video on Tuesday. The more the whole plan feels useless, and I lose all of my motivation to do it at all. I start seeing all of the ways that I feel like a failure. I need a system designed for me. All the critique aside, I'm not mad I read the book. In fact, I came to a huge breakthrough because of the pre 12-week questions, and then another huge breakthrough when I was venting about my frustrations. The first thing that I want to explore, this breakthrough that I had, is that I didn't reach my goals because I didn't prioritize my goals. This sounds ridiculous said aloud. Like, of course, if you don't prioritize your goals, you're not going to reach them. It still came as a revelation to me as I was doing that top down and then bottom up thinking about my plans. I wrote out my goals for the next 3 years first, which is what it asked me to do. And then, for my own brain's sake, I wrote out my commitments. And I realized why I failed at my 2016 5-year plan. When I wrote out these plans, I had 11 projects on my plate. At least 5 of them were more of what I was already doing. Working one-on-one takes up the majority of my time, but it only forwards my short-term financial goals. I had the same goals in 2016 as I do now, mainly involving passive income because my energy levels are so unpredictable. But if I had one-on-one work, it got the best of me. It got the most of my time, it got my energy. I would put it first and work on passive income in slow periods when I was stressing about money, over and over again, while I wondered why I was never successful at scaling my business. It's like that analogy of trying to fill a jar. If you put in rocks first, you can then add pebbles, sand, and water in the gaps. But if you fill it with water first, like a justification that it's a more immediate need because you need water to survive, understandably, there's no room for the rocks or pebbles or sand. When you put in the necessary first, then these important but not urgent goals fall to the side. But when you do the important but not urgent things first, the necessary still happens because it's necessary. You're going to make time for it, right? In fact, this summer has been one of building momentum for me in ways that feel like I'm finally getting the culmination of what I've been working to build in many different life areas over the past 10 years. It's taken literally years, but I have leg measures, those things that happen that you can't control but are the goals of the lead measures, the showing up every day. The leg measures are actually moving. I hit a huge milestone on Medium with my articles. I am making significant progress on my musical. I'm going to hit my Duolingo goal for the year early. This is all really exciting for me. And like, I design systems. Like, it's part of how I want to make a living with that novel writing companion, with other things that I'm doing in Notion. I want to build a 12-week year plan desperately. I just want it to work. I want to make a living doing this. Designing them in Notion especially has been creatively fulfilling for me, and it uses the best parts of my brain. But the system that I used for making forward progress this summer is relatively embarrassing considering that I design systems. This is what I did. I grabbed a notebook. I wrote down what I was behind on. I had 22 drafts on Medium. I had 12 chapters remaining on a client project, 8 ideas for Notion templates, 3 scenes left to write in my musical at the time. That's changed. 5 lessons in my songwriting class. Then every few weeks, I crossed out the number and I wrote down the current one. My amorphous goal was make them smaller. That's it. I was relying on the ADHD motivational C of completion and creation by the nature of the work I do. It was so disorganized, and it worked for me. I'm moving the needle on things that I've been trying to move the needle on for 10 years. all I did was write them down and check in every couple of weeks. It's been nearly 3 weeks since I devoured the 12-week yearbook and began watching YouTube videos about it. I've previewed dozens of 12-week year templates. I've messed around for hours trying to figure out a template of my own that takes into consideration what it means to want to make significant creative progress in 12 weeks. I even read a sample of the 12-week year for writers book, but it wasn't available at my library, and it seemed to focus on nonfiction writing, which has fewer unknown unknowns than fiction writing does. I don't think that I can make a 12-week year look like the men who wrote the book want me to make it look, because I am a mother with ADHD whose goals are creative. The system still appeals to me, though, especially right now. I do feel like when the pandemic hit, I let all of my long-term goals fall by the wayside in favor of survival. Understandably, I needed it. I had a daughter in kindergarten, a 4-year-old son. There was a lot going on at the moment, to quote Taylor Swift. But it's been 4.5 years. Just about a whole 5-year plan could have fit into this time, and at least until this summer, I was treading water. I had made no progress on my goals. I was just sort of staying the same. My prioritization process for tasks has been out of alignment with my long-term goals forever. I give the best of my days to the kinds of clients and type of work that I don't mind having, and some of my clients are amazing. I never want to stop working with them. But I don't see one-on-one work as a big category, as a part of my long-term plan. I've spent 10 years giving what is left of me to what I called side quests. But what if the side quest was the main quest all along? I had a gig that I walked away from in May. I kept it for 11 years, long after it stopped being in alignment with my goals, long after they made it clear by inaction. I was never going to be financially valued as part of the team. They valued me for free labor, even when they were paying me. It was well under what I probably deserved to be paid. It was relatively steady work, though. And my one-on-one work now, I love. It is so valuable to me, and it's a side quest. No matter whether I develop an official system or not, I am determined to remember that I'm counting on me. Even more than my clients are. More than my kids are, because they need me to be fulfilled for me to be a good mother to them. I'm counting on myself. And I think it's time that, disorganized or not, Notion template or not, I make some time for her goals. If you like this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe if you want to see more things like this, and I look forward to talking to you soon.